Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Merry Draft Day Saturday! My name is Aldo Gandia. Welcome to GTF. Gabriel Talks Football. We have completed 3 rounds of the NFL Draft, and we're now headed into the big Day 3. We've got wall-to-wall coverage with GTF now, and then coverage of every pick later today. Oh, and then tomorrow it is a bourbon and sleep for me anyway. Let me bring in the star of the show, Greg Gabriel. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing real good, except I don't know if this is a big day. There's one pick for the Bears, and that's going to be like 45 minutes in, and then it's like, okay, do whatever you want because there's no more picks till next year. My hometown team, Buffalo, they got in the first 2 rounds today, between the 4th and the 5th, they got 5 picks.
Oh, okay.
So
wow.
They're going to be busy in these 2 rounds.
Do you think there's any chance at all that polls will move down and add some more picks, or do you think this draft doesn't deserve many more picks other than 1 or 2?
I think there's a need he's got to fill. He's got to get a defensive lineman. Now, I see 3 edges that I like. There's a couple others out there, but whether they're worthy of this pick, that remains to be seen. I guess, beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. But there's Brennan Jackson from Washington State, Mo Camara from Colorado State. And the only reason I think Mo's still there is he gets turned 25 next month. So he's a little bit older. And then Austin Booker from Kansas. And Austin is just 21. He doesn't turn 22 till like December or something. So, and he's undersized. He's 240 pounds, 245 pounds, but he's 6'4", got long arms, good athlete. So, and they brought him in on a 30. So I would say based on that, if he's still there, that would be the guy. But then your favorite's still there, or one of your favorites, Duerwaechter from Oregon, who's a 3, a little bit of an undersized 3. And then there's a guy I like, Gabe Hall from Baylor. Now, Gabe might not be quite, he's like a 5.05 guy. They prefer probably a little bit faster to play the 3, but you watch the tape and he's a pretty good player. And he could probably double as a 1 also. So I would think, taking 3 offensive players, they're going defense. Now, there's a lot of fans, so I'll get this out right now. And then they'll turn around and they'll take a center. Got to get a center. First of all, and even Olin told me this, you can't have a rookie center and a rookie quarterback. That is a recipe for disaster because somebody's got to know what the hell they're doing in the middle of the line. And when you got 2 guys that don't know what they're doing, that creates disaster. And so you got to have a veteran. They traded a 5th round pick for 1. They signed another. They got $7 million tied up between the 2. They aren't taking a center. Yeah. It's not. Now, could they take a combo guy? The Georgia kid, Van Pren, has played some guard. And then there's Bo Limmer from Arkansas. He actually only played center 1 year. He played guard for the first part of his career. So, I mean, that's a possibility. But I think you got a defensive head coach who said, I got to get an edge. They only got 1. I would think unless all these guys are gone, that's the direction they're going. And it wouldn't shock me if you saw how many trades there were to start the 2nd round last night. And that's going to happen tonight too, or this morning too, because it's just, you line up your board, you see guys you like, and you're driven to get them, and you move up to get them. Now, he said last night, not out of the question that I'd use a pick next year to move up. So it wouldn't shock me to make sure he gets the guy he's targeting. Reality is it's only a 12-point move to get to the first pick, which is nothing. But you got to pay a premium for it. So we'll see if they do it.
Yeah, it is amazing because yesterday during our draft coverage, there were so many people in the chat room who were clamoring for a center, and I know that we need a long-term answer at the center position, but you're absolutely right, and desperately wanted the Bears to use that eighth pick, the eighth selection of the first round on an offensive lineman, according to the Chicago Tribune. He was wondering why Ian, a former offensive lineman, and Ryan Poles, a former offensive lineman, were banking on skill players as opposed to the trenches. But nonetheless, he says, you want veterans with a rookie quarterback. And so I totally understand that. Now, you might have Kiran come in and compete for that left tackle position or an inside guard position. That's just, I find Kiran, to be more of a developmental piece.
He is. And we'll talk about that with our guest, Eric Duerwaechter, in a couple of minutes. The poll said he's going to compete. But then if you listen to the whole thing a little later, but we expect him to be a swing guy this year. Mm-hmm. But here's what could happen. And I'm literally throwing a dart at the wall. Tevin's in the last year of his contract. He hasn't been the most durable guy in the world. Okay, if Amegadjie turns out to be what they hope he can be, and we'll talk more about him when Eric comes on, then to me it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that one of those two guys moves inside and the other guy's at left tackle. If you want to know the not the clone, but the comp for Amegadjie, it's Braxton Jones. Mm-hmm. Same level of comp, about the same size. Amegadjie is a little heavier, about the same height. They both got real long arms. I think Braxton's got 35 and a half, and this guy's got like 36 and a quarter. I mean, real long arms. Same level of comp, both raw coming out. The program Kiran played at, did I say his first name the right way? Kiran?
According to Swifty, it's Kiran.
Kiran?
Yeah.
Okay, well, Yale's probably a more developed program than Southern Utah. Southern Utah, like, at the bottom of the barrel of the FCS level. But still, the level of comp he played against, he dominated. Ivy League competition. You watch him, he just killed guys. But that's not going to happen here. And so, it'll be interesting. He's obviously a real smart kid. You don't go to a place like Yale and not be a real smart kid. And he's local. Yeah. And he's a huge Bears fan. I saw on Twitter last night, they brought up some tweets from 2020. Did you see any of those?
No, I did not.
Oh, he was like, fire the whole offensive line. Why is this guy just killing guys?
That's funny.
He is a big time fan.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we bring our guest in, let's hear what Ryan Poles had to say last night about Kiran.
You love the tools that he has. His pass pro is really good. Love his length, hand usage, and a big man that we believe is going to continue to get bigger and more explosive. So it should really increase the competition on our offensive line and make everyone better.
Ryan, it's a significant asset to use on the offensive line for you. I think that Darnell is the only one that you've drafted higher than this.
Yeah.
What are you envisioning as far as a role here?
Yeah, competing. We don't really want to put a ceiling on him. I see the progression is potentially getting himself into swing tackle setup. He can play guard. He played guard early in his career too. So swing tackle, inside, outside, which is always helpful. We've struggled with flexibility in the past. So he has that ability. And then we'll see where he ascends to. If that means competing to start, this year, next year, that's great. But if he ends up, being just another really good offensive lineman, you can't have enough.
You said in January that you thought Braxton was a starting caliber left tackle, but you weren't opposed to opening up competition there. Is this a move you think that'll or do you envision that him pushing him for a starter's role?
Potentially, probably not year one, but again, I don't want to put a ceiling on a crowd either. I think we'll open that up and kind of see how it goes.
There you go. This is going to be a deep offensive line group. I think Post should have said there's going to be competition up and down this offensive line, don't you think?
Well, yeah, they signed 3 free agents, a center, a guard tackle, and a tackle. Mm-hmm. And then they traded for a center guard. So you've brought in veterans and guys who have played, guys who have started games. That's why I just don't see them, despite what the fan base wants, I don't see them bringing in another center with this pick. This pick, I think, is a lock to be a defensive player. Unless just it all goes out of whack and there's nobody else left. They stay at the 22nd pick and, this is what's left. And they have to take an offensive player.
All right, let's move into bring in our guest. You talked to me about this gentleman, and I am really, really excited to see the conversation he's going to bring to the table. Eric, pronounce your last name for us, Eric.
It is Duerwaechter, my friend. How y'all doing this morning?
Doing well. See,
I got to say something about Eric. Because Eric is, in my opinion, an impressive guy. He knows a lot about football. He's coached football. But the most impressive thing is he's career military. He's in the Navy. Been 12 years, I think you've been in the Navy, right, Eric?
Correct.
Okay. So he goes in as an enlisted man. He's now an officer. That takes dedication, and that tells you what kind of person he is. So that's, let's give a hand for Eric.
Yes.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
It shows you what an impressive person he is. Does a great job writing about the Bears at Windy City Gridiron. So we're happy to have him in. Morning, my friend. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Had a real good time last night with a bunch of new people. And what's up, Swift? And there are people checking in the school. So just kind of a big Navy tradition. You got to welcome the new guys and the new gals the right way. Take them out in the bar, show them the different places. And it was a fun time. Probably stayed up a bit late for a guy that's over 30, but then again, I'm in the room. So, yeah, I'm the baby in this conversation, so I will definitely own that one. But
over 30, and he's saying he's old. That's like 40 years behind me.
I gotta say that I'm the baby in the room today. So hey, it's a nice change of pace for once.
Let me ask. I know you're up in Rhode Island now, and you were down in Tallahassee, or down in Florida. Was it Tallahassee you were at?
It was at Pensacola. Then I moved up here
Pensacola,
in January.
Right. Okay. So, were you ever at Great Lakes?
I was. So RDC Great Lakes, or Great Mistakes, as the Priors like to call it. Just right outside of Chicago. In fact, right when I graduated basic training in May of 2012, basically the family had this big plan for me to go to Soldier Field and do like a one-on-one tour with Bears management there. But unfortunately, we had our liberty cut short because we weren't the honor grads. So we were, we kind of paid for it with our time, if you know what I mean. And that was just, I still got to go out to Chicago. That was my first time in Chicago, was graduating boot camp in 2012. And then I've been to Soldier Field quite a few times. And I'm real excited about the new stadium, by the way. It's perhaps a conversation for another time. But, I love my times going to Chicago. I have a lot of friends going to Chicago. And then oddly enough, when I was an intern at University of West Florida, a lot of our coaches on that staff were from the Chicago area, particularly from like Naperville, a couple from Arlington Heights, one that stayed in the Loop, the Bend, and all that. I personally like being at Greektown. But it's just, great mistakes. That was the best time in my life I never want to have again. Same thing for OCS. That was the best time in my life I never want to have again. That was a 13-month adventure compared to a 9-week adventure the first time.
Hey, Eric,
well, congratulations.
let me ask you a quick question of Eric, his personal life, and then I'll let you two guys talk football. Eric, tell us about your fandom with the Chicago Bears. When did you start following them, and what have been some of your highlights, if there are any highlights of you following the Bears? I'm sure there are.
Ooh, I got a great story. Thanks for that question, Aldo. I did say that right, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, because I have the most complicated name in the room, so I want to make sure I learn how to say other people's names correctly.
Thank
but
you.
Let's see, how did I become a Chicago Bear fan? Well, I am the black sheep of the family. My grandfather is a Packers fan. In fact, he owns that worthless paper.
Poor guy.
Stock. But no, I love him to death. He was a gunnery sergeant, and he went through Korea and Vietnam. And he taught me a lot of discipline early in my life. And he's also been one of my biggest cheerleaders from the sidelines. And plus, he got me used to the expectation of what Marine DIs are like in OCS. So that was a bonus since he was one himself. But how did I become a Chicago Bears fan? This was the Walter Payton game of '99, I believe. It was a week after Walter Payton passed away. And this is the beginning of the brainwashing process. This is the first time I remember meeting my granddad as a little kid. My first gift from my granddad was a Green Bay Packers shirt. And on top of that, my mom was also a Packers fan. So naturally, how do they start the brainwashing process? They sit me down in front of the big TV in the family room, and they have me watch the Bears-Packers game November of 1999.
Oh.
Brett Favre had never lost to the Bears at Lambeau Field up to this point. Well, until that day. Brian Robertson blocked the would-be game-winning field goal and handed Brett Favre his first loss to the Bears at Lambeau Field. And I remember the commentary being something about Walter Payton's spirit lifting the player to block the kick. And I was in this Green Bay Packers shirt, by the way, which has long been trashed, by the way. Yeah, I was wearing this Green Bay spiral. My dad actually made a bet with my granddad saying that if anything, I would become a Chicago Bears fan by the end of the day. My dad had a disdain for the Packers because he was never a Brett Favre fan. He was a John Elway fan, but he also was a Steelers fan. He got to meet Mean Joe Green in person when he was in the Navy, and they did an OSO tour or USO tour. I apologize, but the moment happens, and I just like jump up and like, I'm a Bears fan now. Let's go. He looked at my dad and said, Jeff, put this kid up for adoption. We don't need him. So we're just – from that point forward, I had become a Bears fan, and I never looked back, even though it started in 99, and we had some very rough times from the end of 99 before Greg arrived in 2002. Like
2001 now. You got to get to
2001. Gotcha. Like I said, those are some fuzzy memories back then. I was real little, but that was
great story.
Yeah, that's my story for you guys.
All right, I'll be watching in the background.
25 years now you've been a fan, so that's a long time.
Oh, yeah, it's a long time, and, just you can never call me a bandwagoner because I stuck with them thick and thin. So and you've seen it for yourself firsthand that, hey, like before you and Jerry showed up in 2001, there were some dark times. We don't need to revisit all those times, but man, those were the days. Those are days that we can forget about.
Well, we came in, we turned things around. We won the division 3 times in the time we were there. Got to 1 Super Bowl. Got to the playoffs 4 times, I think. And, since we've been gone, it's only been in the playoff 1 time. And we also drafted 12 guys that went to the Pro Bowl. So I'm
technically twice.
2?
Yep, 2, 2018, 2020, but the 2021 was kind of a joke.
Yeah. So, it's – I think they're coming back. Whether they're going to do it this year or not, that's putting an awful lot on a rookie quarterback. I said it on the show before. I said it yesterday too. There's only been 2 really highly drafted quarterbacks going back to 2012 that have gotten to the playoffs. Andrew Luck, first overall pick, 2012, got the Colts to the playoffs. Fast forward to last year, Stroud, who was picked number 2, got Houston to the playoffs. So in between that, that's like 12 full seasons. No rookie has ever taken his team to the playoffs. So it's asking a lot and saying that this team is in pretty good shape. They're not quite there yet. They got to find another edge somehow. And even, it's the 4th round. There's some good guys out there. But is that guy going to be a bona fide starter, the top player this year? I don't think so. He'll be a role player / rotational player. To me, they still got to get somebody else, and that means a vet. And there's not very many vets out there. I mean, the best one is probably Ngakoue. And, do they want Ngakoue back? We don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, and it's just weird things have happened. I mean, there's a gentleman named Max Crosby that was a 4th round pick. The Raiders, the same year they traded away Khalil Mack, and Max Crosby came out in the 4th round. Same expectations, more of a rotational guy at first. He came out and he was on all cylinders, and he's now an all-pro defender. So this is the day that I'm sure you can agree in your experience. Today is the day that you earn your money as a scout, because you never know who you can find between rounds 4 and 7. I mean, so many great examples over the years of people being drafted in the 3rd round or later, 4th round or later on day 3, and they just come out and they become a sensation. But to expect that is unrealistic. And even if the Bears get my guy in Austin Booker, that is going to require some patience. It's going to require some time to refine his skills as a pass rusher, to really bulk him up, beef him up in the weight room, get him ready to be a 3-down starter. Because year 1, like you mentioned, he's probably going to be a rotational guy, or maybe someone that's slotted in the Mark Anderson role, like a guy that you guys picked all those years ago. And I believe the idea was he was to be – in fact, I think he was drafted in the 4th round too.
Yeah.
And
4th
the idea,
or 5th. It might have been the 5th round.
4th or 5th round player from Alabama. And, the idea was he rotates in those pass rush opportunities, and he got 12 sacks his first year. And could they do something like that for Boston Booker? Absolutely. But when you look at the way the Bears are trajecting, they're certainly expected to be better than last year. My expectation is at least above 500. And that's just because you look at what they've done on offense. You have perhaps the best receiving trio that I can think of, at least since 2012, 2013, when you had Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey, and Earl Bennett. Now you have 3 legitimate studs between DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze, who I'm still in shock the Bears got for the 9th overall pick. I never thought he'd still be available. So do I expect playoffs this year? It's a 50-50 chance. A lot would have to fall in the Bears' favor for that to happen. Caleb Williams would have to, basically get off to a hot start as a rookie, smash all the rookie records, and then really settle in as a player that's well past his peers in the developmental curve. But we also look at the history of players from that program, from Lincoln Riley. That offense, it's kind of a cheap version of the West Coast offense. It's still an offense fairly similar to how Shane Waldron runs his offenses in Seattle and when he looked under Sean McVay with the Rams. You look at how Shea Waldron is going to really tailor that offense around Caleb in year 1. He's going to have such a great opportunity to balance out the workload because, again, this is not the typical situation an number 1 overall pick walks into. The Bears had a top 10, if not top 5 defense ending the season last year. They have a plethora of weapons and seasoned veterans in the skilled position groups between running back, tight end, and the receiving core. They have a solid offensive line. So is the opportunity there for Caleb Williams to step in and be a winner in day 1? Absolutely. Is it realistic to expect him to be a playoff contender year 1? Not necessarily. So it's okay to expect improvement. Like I'm expecting improvement above 500. Otherwise, you start looking at Matt Eberflus and ask him, are you really the right head coach for the job? Because you've had 3 years to prove yourself. And we've seen this happen too many times, Greg, where coaches, year later, they get a first-round pick at quarterback. Their 3rd year later, so Dick Duron, John Fox, Matt Nagy. And what happened at that after that first season ended, they all got fired. Even though
I can't see that happening because I don't think they want it to happen. And
correct.
It's just not good for the quarterback situation. And on top of that, the offensive coaches they brought in, and they brought in two different coordinators, really.
Mm-hmm.
But guys who have worked together, they've all worked under McVay. Costs a lot of money for these guys, and they want to give them a chance to grow. So to pull the plug on them after 1 year, first of all, that hurts the development of Caleb. So unless the season is a disaster, I just can't see that happening. To me, and I think Poles might be a little bit more patient than some of his predecessors, and there's a lot going on when Ryan Pace was here. A lot of bad contracts. They had cap problems, overpaid for some players, in trade-ups, in trades, in contracts, whatever. Combination of all the above. So the situation wasn't good. So now we're going into year 3 with Ryan Poles. He's cleaned up the cap situation. And so now they should be in good shape. And you look at the only key position or premier position that he hasn't drafted yet is an edge. Mm-hmm. And so, you'd rather get a rookie with a rookie contract than have to give a Ngakoue whatever. He got $10 million last year. I don't think he can get $10 million this year, but he's always gotten in that, the last 3 contracts he got have all been in that $8 to $10 million range. So he's not going to come cheap, but I don't think he's going to cost $10 million like he did last year. But that remains to be seen. Get back to Austin Booker. I like Austin Booker. In fact, I am a Kansas fan because Chris Ballard, who's one of my best friends, his son is the backup quarterback at Kansas as a true freshman last year. So I'd watch a lot of Kansas games, and I'm watching, and this guy kind of jumps out right away. So I do a little research, and then I remembered that Notre Dame had recruited him. He's from just south of Indianapolis. Notre Dame had recruited him. A lot of Big Ten schools recruited him. He ends up going to University of Minnesota. Redshirts his first year, so that was 21. 22, he plays a little bit for Minnesota as a backup. He wasn't he wasn't even a rotational player. He's a backup. Then he transfers, goes to Kansas, becomes a starter right away. Still played a bit of a rotation, yet he lit it up. What he's wrong, he's just, he's still young. He just turned 21, but his body hasn't matured. And I don't know if he's got the frame to get that much bigger because he's narrow from the hips down. He was 240 at the combine. Can he get to 250, 255? Probably, but he's not going to get any bigger than that. And what the only thing that disappointed, because he's got great quickness, but his 40 time was like 4.78. I thought he'd be a 4.6 something guy. Mm-hmm. Could he have had a bad day? Yes. But that's the time we got, because when you look at his 20 shuttle and his 3 cone that he did at the Kansas Pro Day, he didn't do them at the combine. Those are pretty darn good times. And so based on that, he's a quicker than fast guy, but he's got a good first step. I think there's a lot of upside. I just think that for a year or 2 years, he may be more designated pass rusher type guy than every down player, because I don't know, with his frame, how well he's going to hold up against the run, even though he is tough. Now, he's got a good motor. He's a tough son of a gun. The guy I like better is Brennan Jackson from Washington State, who's like 265. Mm-hmm. And a full 10th faster. He's a 4.68, had 8 or 9 sacks in the Pac-12, and is a really good run defender, as well as being able to rush the passer. Doesn't have the flexibility that Booker has, but I love the motor. And the guy when I looked at his tape, I said, this guy reminds me of somebody. I went back and I got Max Crosby tape out from when Max Crosby was at Eastern Michigan. And they are very, very similar coming out of college. But hey, it doesn't matter what I think, doesn't matter what you think. It's what, Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham and Flus think. It wouldn't shock me if they even move up a little bit to make sure they get a guy. I think Booker is their guy based on the fact that he made a 30 visit, and with his age, Kamara is the most productive guy. Hell, he had like 13 or 14 sacks this year, but he's small. He's 6'1.5". He's the same size as Brandon Graham coming up, and I love Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham's played 14 years in the league now. Almost the exact same size. He's 0.2 of a second faster. He ran like a 4.57, and Brandon Graham was like a 4.75 coming out at the University of Michigan. But the bad news is Kamara's going to be 25 years old in 4 weeks. And so do they want to use a 4th round pick on a 25-year-old? Did that a couple of years ago, and that hasn't worked out that well. So, and like you had on Twitter, he'll be 28 for his 4th season, but he's going to turn 29 for his 5th season if you want to give him a second contract. And now it's like, okay, do we want to do that at 29? So I would think that even though he might have the most talent, he might be the last of the group because of the age.
Yep, this is it's always that, the game you play as a scout, because again, as I mentioned a little bit earlier in the show, today is the day you earn your money. And there are many reasons why these players are at day 3, because whether it's size, bad combine results, less than ideal measurements at the pro days, off the field concerns, whatever you want to say is bringing these players down in terms of a grading perspective. Today is the day to find those hidden gems that you can control for the next 4 years on a cheap rookie deal. And, the Max Crosby comparison for, what was it that you just mentioned? Brennan Jackson for Washington State. That's a very good comparison. And that would be ideal for the Bears if they can get that type of production from a 4th round pick this year. And I'm still in the mindset that Ryan Poles is going to look back into the free agency market eventually, whether it be now, training camp. Maybe he calls Yannick Ngakoue and say, hey, how's your recovery going? Have you do you have the full good to go from your doctors yet? Because when Yannick Ngakoue and Montez Sweat were paired up together defensive end, that was a very productive pass rushing tandem. When Yannick Ngakoue was out for the rest of the year with his broken ankle, that productivity dipped. It was only Montez Sweat really getting after the quarterback from the defensive end position.
Then he drew a lot of doubles because you had nobody else.
Exactly.
And that's the key problem. They don't have anybody else. There's nobody else on this team right now that you can put on the other side, opposite Montez Sweat, and say he's going to give you any type of consistency as a pass rusher. It's just not there on the team.
Yeah, and it's especially for the type of style of defense they want to play, because they want to go back to just rushing the first 4 and then keeping linebackers in coverage. Letting Tremaine Edmonds, T.J. Edwards, and for those occasional downs, Jack Sanborn do what they do best. Drop back in coverage and free them up for other opportunities elsewhere on the field. But we're looking at these defensive ends. I actually personally will not be surprised if Ryan Poles even goes so far as to dip into the trade market again. Granted, I think it's unlikely he goes after somebody like Trey Hendrickson. I mean, that would just be an expensive proposition to propose.
And he wants $20 million.
Yeah,
so, and he's 29 years old. Just looking at the way how he wants to deal with cap dollars, and he's already spending a whole lot of money on Sweat. I don't see that happening, because now you've got a ton of money on older guys. Now, Sweat really isn't that old. He's 27 years old. But this guy's 29, which means, how much longer is he going to be productive? And you've got to pay him a lot of money. So I just don't see that one happening. And furthermore, Cincinnati don't like to trade anybody. So you can say, I want to get traded, but the Browns, they aren't moving anybody. They're going to say, no, you're playing here.
Yeah, the Bengals, they like keeping their own. And then, so now you're looking at Trey Hendrickson, but maybe perhaps someone else pops up on that trade market where you call around the scenes like, hey, some of these teams are picking a lot of defensive linemen. I remember somebody mentioned yesterday that, like for example, Washington picked up another defensive lineman, and now people are wondering if they're going to move on from Allen. And there are other teams around the league that could possibly move their defensive linemen after the results of the draft. But, Ryan Poles, he's always looking at ways to improve the defensive line. They were involved early in free agency on several guys, and they just couldn't come away with them. And I believe they're like Leonard Williams is one of them. You had trying to think.
It all got down to dollars. And, he's got a limit. He has in his mind, okay, this guy's worth X amount of dollars. This is what I'll pay him. When it gets above that line, he said, see ya. It's got to work for him. And they use analytics in it. They use injury history, obviously production. And when it gets above the line, that's why they walked away from McGlinchey last year. That defensive lineman from Denver who went out to Seattle, they walked away from it because it got higher than they wanted to pay. And I'm sure that's exactly what happened with some of the edges of free agency. So, yeah, we'll sign one, but it's got to be at our figure, not some crazy figure. And you know what? All those guys got crazy money.
This is true. It's dangerous of free agency. I mean, in fact, Draymond Jones is the player that signed with Seattle. And when you look at just how that overall history of signing defensive linemen to gigantic money, especially defensive tackles of free agency, very few of them ever live up to that contract. I think if you look at the history of free agency, defensive tackle, the hit rate, it's towards the very bottom in terms of free agency signings. I mean, for every one good signing, Andrew Billings was a hit, and he signed the smallest deal out of all those really productive full-time starters at defensive tackle.
He signed like a veteran, just over veteran minimum deal.
$2 million last year. He had $2 million versus Draymond Jones. I think Draymond Jones had 20 or plus million guaranteed on signing.
Yeah, no, it's crazy money.
It's just crazy money, and just Draymond Jones. I mean, you saw Seattle drafted a defensive tackle with their first pick, and I'm like, that's not exactly a good look for, all the investment they made the previous year. Of course, new coaching staff, new philosophies as well. And you look at just the temptation to go crazy with, the Bears, if they wanted to, they can spend one more decent-sized deal in terms of cap space. But really today, it comes down to Ryan Poles, whether or not he actually finds this guy today. And last night he mentioned that there are some, in his little grading system that you and I have talked about before, he's got these different color tiers, and one of those top tiers is gold.
Right.
And
you said there's a bunch of gold still there.
Yep, a bunch of gold still there. And Ryan Poles might even use some later picks in 2025 to move up today. Maybe if Austin Booker's there, or all these other great young defensive linemen that you have falling today, because it really goes back to the first round where the first 14 picks were all offense. And it pushed all these defensive players down the board to an unprecedented level, really. And now, yesterday you saw a fire sale happening in the second round, people moving up and down, trying to get these players.
But that always happens, and it's going to happen again today. You're sitting on your board, you're looking at, and you have a love affair. There's somebody on your board that really jumps out and say, I got to get them. So now, and you look at this year's draft and you say, well, it's not a deep draft. I'll give up some of those late picks or whatever. I'll do whatever I have to do to go up and get the guy I want, because that's going to be better than what I can get with that pick I got to give up. So, yeah, it makes sense. And you're going to see it happen today. Wouldn't surprise me that there's at least 5 trades in the first 10 picks today.
Oh, not at all. In fact, I even wonder if that first pick is up for sale. I wonder if that's going to happen right when we kick off the draft today. What was it, 12 Central, 1 o'clock noon or afternoon?
It's in an hour and 20 minutes.
Oh, well, we still got plenty of time. So it's just, I wonder if that first pick's going to be traded right away, because, you have all these teams that still want defensive players, or you have quite a few offensive players. Well, it's such a deep receiver class. You've got Devontae Walker, you got Troy Franklin. I won't be surprised if somebody trades up right away to get one of those guys. Johnny Wilson as well. I really like this little streamer at the bottom. It reminds me of the names that happened, but I won't be surprised if quite a few trades happen right off the bat. Then maybe Ryan Poles jumps in, because if he wants his guy at defensive end to really just get that position filled. Then calls of the day. He's like, all right, I got my 4 guys. I got my 4 contributors. And he walks away from the draft because Ryan Poles, even from day one, said he's more than happy just keeping 4 draft picks. Because
right. And then it's going to be seeing who they sign in free agency. Now, the interesting thing is, 45 minutes into this thing this morning, they're going to be done. Maybe even sooner if they trade up. So now you got the rest of the day, the draft's going on. Your scouts are going to be recruiting the hell out of guys that are still left. And we used to do that, and we'd recruit them all week leading up to the draft. But, you call them up, and what we used to say is, hey, Eric, I really hope you get drafted. But if you don't, we want you. And you tell them why. And not only do you call him, you call the agent. And you sell the agent on the opportunity and what you have in store. So they're going to have no more picks. They're going to have plenty of time to do that, like hours of time. And I would think they're going to be selective. The rookie pool for free agents as far as signing bonus is the same across the board. It's how you use it. You can spend extra money if you want to. If there's guys that really like and say, okay, I'll spend money on these guys. I'll give them $15,000, $18,000, $20,000 signing bonus to make sure I get them versus signing 20 guys and giving them $5,000. That could happen, but it really depends on the quality of the player and what kind of grade they have on them.
It's always fun watching, again, just that's the next fire sale that's going to happen is the undrafted free agent market. And to your point, it's going to be fun for the scouts to really go out there and start recruiting these players. Like, hey, look, we got no more draft picks, but if you don't go to, if you don't hear your name get called, we want you to know that, hey, we want you to be a Chicago Bear. And then Ryan Poles mentioned this right before the draft kicked off too. In his own words, it's going to be very difficult to make the team this year because you have, for the most part, your top 53 already set in terms of depth chart, in terms of start. At least the majority of the starting lineup on offense and defense is set. And so there's really only one starting job up for grabs. That's that defensive end, that anchor defensive end adjacent from Montez Sweat. Other than that, you've got every other position set in stone going into week 1 of the NFL regular season. And I don't think the Bears are going to sign as many undrafted free agents as we've seen last year. They're going to be more targeted. They're going to look at guys like, hey, can you contribute right away in special teams? I think that's the big one is, can these players on day 3 not just contribute, say, offense, defense, but can they be special teams guys? Because that's for a majority of players between the 4th round and the 7th round and undrafted free agent market. That's where a lot of them get their start is on special teams. So we talk about, again, the idea of drafting a defensive end with their 4th round pick today and their only pick today. But then those undrafted free agents, they're going to look at restocking the shelves on special teams because remember now, special teams wasn't too good last year either from a kickoff perspective, from a kick return perspective, punt returns. I think they had one of the worst punt return coverage teams in the league last year. You kind of play the circus of the clowns. You see these different big returns being broke off at random moments. You already had enough issues on offense last year as is trying to come from behind. And then you have these special teams gapes happening. It makes life so hard for you when you have to come on the field on defense and you have to defend a short field.
Yeah, you can't. Your punt team has got to be really, really good. You cannot afford to give your opponent, especially if they got a good offense, a short field because they're going to come away with points.
Yep, all the
There's
time.
no question about it. Tell you, there's one thing I want to bring up because, and get back to Booker a little bit. My second draft in the 4th round. Now, then the draft was on Saturday and Sunday. Mm-hmm. So the first 3 rounds on Saturday started with 4. So 4 was a hot. If you had a top 10 pick in the 4th round, the phone was ringing off the hook for teams trying to trade up, and we got a bunch of calls. But there was a guy we were really zeroing in on. He stuck out on our board because we had a 2nd round grade on him, and it was the 4th round, and that was Alex Brown. So we got Alex Brown with the sixth pick or fifth pick of the fourth round. Now, Alex was undersized, not quite 6'3", 248 pounds. Yeah, I know you're a Gator guy. 248 pounds. He didn't run good. He was like a 4.88, 4.87, something like that, which, you want, but he's got such a quick first step. He played 4.65. Okay, so go back to Booker. Booker ran 4.79. I think he had
up a little bit
because he plays a lot better. And
Greg,
I'm sorry, what?
Everybody's freezing. Am I freezing?
No, everything looks good to me.
Looks fine on my end.
Must be your end.
We're just talking about get off. Your computer has a slow get off, man.
No, so anyway, when you look at age, growth potential, production he had in his first year as a starter, it wouldn't shock me if that's the guy they take, if he's still there, or they go up and try to get him. Because again, they brought him in on a 30 visit, so there was some sort of love affair there. And one of the reasons they brought him in, they might have wanted to really take a good look at him physically to see, okay, what can the strength guys do with this guy? What's the growth? We used to do that all the time when Rusty Jones was here. And Rusty would say, I can put X amount of pounds on him, so much this year, so much next year, of lean, and he'd always call it lean mass weight, because I want to put good weight on him. I don't want fat weight. So, and the guy they have running the weight room right now was a Rusty protege. He was here when I was here, Jimmy Arthur. And so I know Jimmy really well, and I know the program he runs. So I'm sure they did, the same type of thing when they brought Booker in. Okay, he's 240 now. Where can he be? Where can he be in training camp? Where can he be next year? And again, he's young. He just turned 21.
Yep. And so, and before we talk about last night's pick too, because I don't want to disrespect that young man and not talk about him as well, because I think it's an interesting pick, and I think it's a good pick. But the reason why I like Austin Booker so much, from a film perspective, from a trace perspective, day 3 is all about trace to me. Is this guy, does he have the size, that explosiveness in the defensive line case? Does he have the traits that we're looking for from a developmental standpoint to where we can elevate this player to the next level? Can we take this player that drafted so low for X amount of reasons? Can we take him from what he is today and make him something tomorrow or next year? And the reason why I'm such a big fan of Austin Booker, get this, he had just 505 snaps last year. From a grading perspective, it's very hard to fall in love with a player with such a small sample size. And in spite of that, he had 8 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, had one of the highest pressure rates in the country in terms of winning his one-on-ones against offensive tackles that are considerably larger. And then what I like the most about Austin Booker, he has such a large toolbox. He's got a wicked ice pick. He's got a great speed rush move to get to the outside. Even though he ran a 4.79, he looks like a 4.67 guy in film.
Yep.
And he has a really good dead arm as well, basically a good stick arm on the side. And he just has all these tools in the toolbox for such a limited amount of film. I think there are like 6-7 different moves he demonstrated on a consistent basis. He has a really good hesitation step too, where he baits offensive tackles to set up too early. That's one of my favorite moves in the toolbox. It's just he has a really good false step where he will, if he's trying to go inside, he'll take that over-exaggerated step to the outside and make the offensive tackle take the bait to go overcompensate to the outside, and it sets him up so nicely to go inside. Now, what gets him in trouble is his sometimes pad level gets away from him, and then when he goes inside, sometimes he merges a little too high. And when you look at, again, that's just a coaching perspective. The Bears,
right. You can fix that. You
can fix that.
You want to see if he plays with Ben, and he does play with Ben. So now it becomes a concentration thing. during practice, working on it. Know what I like? 240 pounds, but he's got a good stab.
Yep, really good stab.
So, he can jolt some guys who are a lot bigger than him.
Mm-hmm.
That's impressive. I'm going to end up talking myself into this, even though I like Jackson a little bit better. But
I mean, you're free to join the club, man. You can join the hype train.
Jackson's going to be 24 in November, I think. So now you still got a 2-year difference in age, and when you take that into consideration, and maybe you do put Austin Booker at the top, even though I think Jackson's more ready to play every down this year. But hey, that's the Bears front office decision.
Yep.
Although,
hey guys,
you came back.
I am back. And before you start talking about Kiran, because I know you guys wanted to share some thoughts on him, I got a few questions for both of you.
Go for it.
Lee Bruin asked, who do you think might slide down to UDFA? And I think that's too huge a question and speculation. So what I'll tell Lee is on our next broadcast, Greg will break down who the Bears actually have brought in via UDFA and try to get as much information on those young prospects.
Yeah, there's going to be, after the Bears, let's say they stay where they are. That's pick number 122.
Right.
You've got over 250 guys getting picked. So you've got another 130, 135 guys getting picked. You have no idea who's going to be there.
Right.
You're not even halfway there when the Bears are done because of all the compensatory picks. So, to even guess where they're going to go in undrafted free agency is they're just going to call guys they think might be there, and they're going to sell them. And they should have been doing it all week, and they probably have been doing it because that's every team does it. But what they got this year that really nobody, Minnesota's going to have it, is they don't have any picks. You got 4 picks. Minnesota's got 4 picks. So you're selling opportunity.
Right.
Hey, we got a first round, 2 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and a fourth-round pick. You got a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Vince asked a position where they didn't draft.
Yeah. Vince asked a question, so I'll pose it to both of you about the Iowa punter, Torrey Taylor. I mean, this guy had a phenomenal punting career at Iowa, 6'4", huge leg. Gill is under contract, but there's not a lot of guaranteed dollars there. So what do you guys think? Should Taylor get a look from the Bears?
I mean, quite honestly, I think the Bears could stand to get an upgrade at punter because it's been okay at best when you look at the overall net yardage for what the Bears currently have at punter, but it could stand to be a bit better. I mean, do I think about spending a draft pick on a punter or a kicker? Well, certainly not a kicker, but for a punter, that'd be a hell no for me in the 4th round. I mean, if somehow the Bears trade down all the way to like 7th round, and there just happens to be that guy available in the 7th round, then okay, maybe I consider that. But I will give them this. Lately, the last 3 years, there have been at least 1 punter and 1 kicker drafted on day 3. It happens somewhere. In fact, what was it? Last year, like 2 or 3 were drafted. So is it out of the realm of possibility to draft a punter? Absolutely not. But for the Bears, where they're at with their 1 4th-round pick, I wouldn't. I wouldn't do it.
No, I can't see it happening. And history tells you that you can sign a undrafted free agent, and he's going to make your team. A lot of the kickers in the league were never drafted. Yeah. So it's doing your homework. And don't forget now, because people say, well, look at the average this guy had in college. Okay. One thing that fans might not understand, first of all, it's a totally different ball.
It is.
And in the NFL, you're kicking NFL game balls, which are hard as a rock. Go to a college game. And I remember I was now I can't think of his name, and he's retired now, but he was a former official, lived in Evanston. So when he retired from doing officiating On the field, he went out and scouted officials, he was going to college games every weekend, just like we do. And so he's next to me in the press box at the Georgia-Arkansas game. This is, years ago. And the guys are kicking the shit out of the ball. And he goes, when these guys get to hard league, how come they don't kick like that? And I said, watch what happens with the ball after the kick. So he said, okay. So guy kicks the ball comes back to the sideline, goes in a box, and there's a special guy taking care of the balls. First of all, those are old, scuffed up balls. And do they overinflate them or whatever? They may, because they don't check on it in college. But they're going to go a lot farther. They're softer. It's not the hard ball like you're using in the NFL. It's a little bit different shape. We call them like balloon balls. And so their average in college is going to be better just because of the different type of ball they're doing and what they can get away with in the college game. The league does so much checking on that it's impossible. Until they started doing that a few years ago, they used to use more scuffed up balls to the kickers, but they can't anymore. They're using the same balls. They got a K on it for kicking, but they're brand new balls each week.
Yep.
All right, let me get another question in here. This will be a good segue to talking about Kiran. Kyle Waddle asks that he's starting to think that maybe Kiran was drafted to be a guard starter in 2024. They probably are scared to sign Tevin Jenkins long term. I think that would be a legitimate concern. What do you guys think?
I agree that it's a question mark on signing Tev. I love Tev as a player, especially, when he's on his game, he's one of the better guards in the game and a great run blocker. But he's been hurt every single year. He's already had a back surgery. He had a little bit of a back issue when he was in school. Looking at the money that guards are now getting going into free agency, do they want to give him that kind of money when he hasn't had the durability? So I think that's a question mark. That's why I said earlier, it wouldn't shock me that one of these two guys, either Braxton or Kiran, ends up being a guard next year. Now, and Pohl said it. He said, yeah, he could be a swing guy this year, maybe move up inside and be a swing guy inside too. Position versatility gets you to dress on Sunday. If you can play, and right now the Bears do not have a swing tackle.
They do not.
Borum has the position. Borum's making $3.2 million this year. They're not going to keep a backup making $3.2 million. It's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. And especially a guy that really is more right than left. You can get out of a game with him, but if he's got to play 3 or 4, you're in trouble. So I don't see him being there. And this kid's got the traits. Granted, he played in the Ivy League. He's raw, but he's got the natural size, the feet, the bend, the strength, the arm length. He's got everything needed. I compare him to Braxton coming up. Lower level of comp, FCS level of comp, similar size, a little heavier than Braxton, similar type of athlete. Those guys are natural left tackles. And so, just looking at the traits, they should have got drafted a lot higher, but because of the circumstances, playing at a lower level of comp, and in Braxton's case, probably the worst FCS school in the country, in the program, you're not going to get drafted high. But they got the toolbox to become very good players.
Eric, what are your thoughts on our new offensive lineman, Kiran, and the potential role he's going to play on the team?
You got to say the last name, man. Amegadjie.
I got to practice it first in front of a mirror.
Me too. So with my thoughts, Amegadjie, did I say it right? Yes, no, maybe. Can Swifty confirm that for me, please? With Amegadjie, the big thing for him is that Ryan Poles was pretty clear last night. He has an opportunity this year if he works into it, if he looks the part, he competes early in camp, he's going to have a chance. My overall thinking, and actually I saw this hinted by Brad Biggs last night, is there are some legitimate questions as to Nate Davis, and there is the potential Nate Davis gets cut for X amount of reasons. So I think it's kind of a possibility that the Bears looking at both Tevin Jenkins and Nate Davis, and they're asking the question, all right, do we really have our tandem at guard set for now in the future, or are one of these guys going to have to be popped and we put in Kiran into that position? And it is a legitimate valid point that the scheme versatility and the flexibility to tackle in the guard is so big in terms of having that depth, because Kiran played both left tackle and left guard, and he played pretty damn well at both those spots. And Tevin Jenkins, I'm a huge Tevin Jenkins fan. I really want to see Tevin put it all together this year. This is his year. If he puts it together this year, if he makes it from beginning to end unscathed, and he continues playing at what I consider to be a Pro Bowl level at left guard, he shows that on film, he's going to get a second contract. But again, it comes back to, can he legitimately stay healthy? And it's not his fault to his own about staying healthy, because injuries happen. It's just a part of the league. But there are those concerns that Ryan Poles is thinking about a long-term perspective. And again, you go back to Nate Davis. He missed quite a bit of time last year because I believe he had a death in the family last year, which my condolences on that as well. But then there are also times he got to actually play on the field. He didn't look that good. And then on top of that, the Bears brought in his former offensive line coach from Tennessee as the assistant offensive line coach. And he may have his own opinions on Nate Davis that are not exactly glowing remarks. So there's questions about that input. So I do think it's the biggest warning shot to Braxton Jones, more so than the guards between Tevin Jenkins or Nate Davis. But I'm not going to roll it out at this point, because Ryan Poles, he is a firm believer in picking your best five, figuring it out. And if the best five includes Kiran at left guard or left tackle, or even, right guard even, or if Braxton Jones gets kicked inside for whatever reason, so be it. But in my personal opinion, it's definitely a one-year thing, because I would rather not see a rookie at left tackle. Braxton's got a good amount of health and a good amount of experience. To put a rookie at left tackle with a rookie at quarterback and a still relatively inexperienced guy at center, it sets you up for disaster for this year. So in my long-winded answer about this could play so many different ways. And Ryan Poles has said himself, if Kiran, and let me try the last name. I can't do it.
Amegadjie.
Amegadjie. Thank you. But if he looks the part this year, if he actually goes in a training camp and he shows he's ready, he will get his chance.
Well, let's listen to what Amegadjie had to say when he was asked to what he has to do and to describe himself.
I want to marry up my nastiness, my physicality, my toughness. I want to marry that up with technique. Just be cleaner, be a cleaner player, get more experience. I want to compete against the best. I want to be the best. So, just little fixes here and there. They'll take me there.
Do you have a preferred position?
I'm a tackle. I prefer tackle. But I'll play anywhere. I'm a football player. You can put me wherever you want on the field. I'll go make a play. I'm a very confident person. I think I'm a great player, but I'm not a finished product, and I'll never, be ashamed of that. So every day is a work. It's a thing. It's a work ethic thing. It's about getting better. And my ceiling is extremely high. I believe I have the highest ceiling in this entire draft class of any player. So for me, it's about what I can do every single day to achieve that. And me and Coach Morgan talked about that in our meeting, and that's exactly what I plan on, attacking from day one.
Sounds
You've got
impressive.
confidence. You got to say that.
He's real confident. I like that. And I like how he says he preferred to be a tackle because, of course, big money's at tackle compared to guard. But That's a young
I got to
man.
say this. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish. Just to argue about Nate Davis with you a little bit, I give him a pass, and he was a good player at Tennessee. So I'm going to assume that the Tennessee coach has to feel good about this guy because he was one of the as good as they had across the line. Now they had some pretty good tackles, but very, very solid player, and that's why he got some money from the Bears. Last year, okay, his mother during the offseason program, OTAs and all that, his mother is dying, and he had a very close relationship with her. I'll tell you that's going to affect a 25-year-old guy, 26-year-old guy, big time. It carried. She ends up dying right before the season starts. That's going to screw up anybody, let alone a football player. I give him a pass, but he's still got to prove himself this year. You give him a pass for the play last year, but he's got to come in and be the player that they thought they were getting a year ago when they signed him. Now, I'm saying that too. When I was looking to see, and I have not seen it, is he taking last year? He did not take part in the off-season program. He did it on his own back in Nashville. Is he there now? I don't know the answer to that because they haven't said who's there and who's not there. They haven't even given, as far as I know, they haven't even given a number how many people are there.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things, though, that worries me about Nate is his play really wasn't that much different from his play at Buffalo. A grade for run blocking, and he had some games that were lower graded than that with the Bears, but his weakness has always been pass protection at Buffalo, and we saw that last year. Tennessee, I'm sorry. And we saw that last year. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
There wasn't that much of a gap with his play at Tennessee and Chicago?
I thought he was a better player at Tennessee than he was here, for sure. And I just think that it was a lot of it had to do with what was going on in his head. I mean, we can't relate to that. I was in my 30s when my dad passed. My mom passed 3 weeks before I came here in 2001. I was a lot older. So I didn't experience that when I'm 25, 26 years old. So, I don't know how it would have affected me then. But, I do know from talking to some people, he was.
Uh-oh. We lost Greg for a little while. Tell you what, while we wait for him to log back in, I'll ask Eric this question. What did you make of the Atlanta Falcons pick of Mike Penix?
Yes. Thanks for asking that question. Oh my God. It brought some PTSD back because oddly enough, Ryan Pace is with the Atlanta Falcons as one of the senior executives in the scouting department, if I'm not mistaken. And Greg can elaborate a little bit more on that. But it looked like a much worse version of what happened in 2017 when Mike Lennon gets signed. Then he's hosting the draft party. And then the Bears trade up to 2 to get Mitchell Trubisky. And then you see Mike Lennon just like about to have tears being shed in front of the audience. You fast forward to Thursday night, that was the biggest shock of the draft. And I will say the first round this year was relatively tame compared to previous years. There weren't really a lot of WTF moments or a lot of head scratchers per se. I think most of the picks made sense. But that Atlanta Falcons pick at number 8 overall. I mean, let's not forget the fact that they had just signed Kirk Cousins to the 4-year deal, $188 million. $180 million to enunciate a little bit better, $100 million guaranteed. And then you have the audacity to then pick in the top 10 a quarterback that you have conceded may not play for 3 to 4 years, as if this is some sort of glorified version of what the Packers have done for decades. Let me just get this out to the open. Kirk Cousins is a player. He's just mid. He's a statistician at quarterback. He gets you good numbers, but he's not going to get you to the promised land. You give all these great pieces around him. I mean, he had a future Hall of Fame player at wide receiver, Justin Jefferson. He had some good pieces in Minnesota. He's had good pieces dating back to his days in Washington. He gets up good numbers, but he's never going to get you to that promised land of getting to the Super Bowl. And then on top of that, just they did not inform Kirk Cousins or his agent that they're picking a quarterback in the top 10 until it happened. And then they had that statement from Kirk's agent saying that they're blindsided by it. And that's going to break a lot of trust between the Falcons organization and them. And then for me, and I'm sure Greg might agree with this, using a top 10 draft pick to sit them on the bench for 3 to 4 years, if things go well for you, if Kirk Cousins plays to a high level, you have a kid in the top 10 that's sitting on the bench for 3 to 4 years. His entire rookie contract might be on the bench, for crying out loud. And it's just, that's negligence on my part. It's not just a wasted draft pick. It's negligence. And then you look at all the other positions of need in Atlanta. It's just
on top of that, he's old.
It's so bad. He's gonna be 28 years old by the time he gets his first NFL career to start. And for them to say like, "Oh, we're fine with that," okay. With all due respect, Terry Fontenot, you have just signed your death warrant in terms of your career by making that statement, because now you're shelving a top 10 pick for God knows how long. And this is not like what the Green Bay Packers had done. I said it this morning when Andrew Brandt mentioned it too. This is nothing remotely close to what Green Bay has done. Green Bay had Hall of Fame quarterbacks mentoring players that slid in the draft between Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love. They're Hall of Fame players. They've won Super Bowls. They've won MVPs. Kirk Cousins, to my knowledge, he's never won an MVP. He's never touched a Super Bowl. He's never sniffed a Super Bowl. He's just a statistician. And you expect that transition plan to work with a player by Michael Penix Jr.? I mean, I thought the Bo Nix pick was pretty god-awful as well, but this one draft pick might be the most notorious that we will see in the last 10 years for so many reasons. And now I'm going to just cut myself short. I can go forever, but I'm going to give Greg the privilege to give his thoughts about this, because this was just stupid in my opinion.
Okay, as far as taking Penix in the first round, I knew he was going to go in the first round. Shocked me that he went to Atlanta. That didn't make sense to me. First of all, he's an overaged kid. He's 24, 25, because he was a 6-year college guy. And they just gave all that money to Cousins. And so, you know, and $100 million guaranteed. It's like, where's the sense? I don't know if you guys watched the draft on ESPN or the NFL Network. I watched the
NFL Network for me.
They spent a half hour to 45 minutes in the pre-draft show talking about nothing but that pick.
Yeah.
And, you know, everybody was like, this is crazy. And it is. You know, now people keep going, Ryan Pace. Well, Ryan Pace isn't the final decision maker. He's the director of player personnel. This is Fontenot, who's the GM. So, but did Pace have a big say in it? I'm sure he, had a big say, but the decision rests on Fontenot, and obviously the head coach gets involved. The whole thing didn't make sense to me.
The explanation from Ron Morris, the head coach,
you guys both frozen?
I think I'm all right.
Yeah, I'm moving fine. You've been having some connection problems, Greg. Your picture's been a little fuzzy and stuff. But I just wanted to add that Ron Morris, the head coach of the Falcons, said, we don't expect to be drafting in the top 10 anytime in the near future.
You guys are both frozen with me.
Okay.
I
Can you hear us though? No?
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us, Greg? I don't think so. We can hear you though. Yeah, he's got a bad connection.
Same thing with Atlanta Falcons management to the fan base. They've got a bad connection too. Good grief.
Exactly. Well, Ron Morris said, we don't expect to be drafting this high again and have an opportunity to get a quarterback like Penix. So that was the motivation that they had. But it definitely was a bad style to not alert Kirk Cousins days before that they were considering this. And you, Eric, you were right on the mark there, saying this is Ryan Pace's MO. This is how he operates. Not telling his head coach John Fox that they were going Trubisky over Watson. That's the kind of stuff that really made me angry with Ryan Pace's GM style.
Yeah, I mean, this is the type of decision that keeps bad teams stay bad when they make these type of decisions. In my personal rule book, if you draft a player in the top 10, they had better be a day one contributor. Day one, no exception, no excuse, unless you go back to the times we had like a realistic bridge plan at quarterback. One of my favorite examples was when the Cincinnati Bengals had Bruce Kwiatkowski at quarterback on his last year of his deal, and then they drafted Carson Palmer, I think, 3rd overall. But then that was Bruce Kwiatkowski's last year. He had one season left in his deal. They only had 1 year of Bruce Kwiatkowski, which he played well, by the way. He won, I think, comeback player of the year that season. And then the next year, it was all Carson Palmer. And then you look at, again, the situations in Green Bay. Again, these are Hall of Fame quarterbacks that are staying there for multiple years. And then eventually they gave the torch to the young guy. And these guys are picked in the 20s. When you pick somebody in the top 10 and you sit him behind a mid quarterback like Kirk Cousins for 3 to 4 years, you're picking in the top 10 again anyway. So you're going to have another chance at a quarterback at some point. And it's just, I feel like they want to play the long game with Michael Penix Jr. because to me, I'm a little bit more bullish than Greg is when it comes to his grade. I had him more of an early 2nd round pick grade on Michael Penix Jr. because of the injury history, because of the 6 years in college, and the one big year he had versus the so-so years leading up to his season in Washington. For him to go in the top 10, and then you're saying, well, we're going to stash him on the bench for 3 years, no problems. Like, just, again, I go back to my favorite term, which is negligence. It's you're wasting an opportunity to get better now. Like save me the talk of we're not going to pick again in the top 10 for 15 years. I guarantee you within the next 3 years, they're picking the top 10 again because that's not a good football team. And it's just bad football teams stay bad because of decisions like that.
Well, they got a lot of offensive weapons. I mean, they got the tight end and Pitts. They got Drake London at the wide receiver position. It's a team, really, that if they would have made more investments into winning now instead of a quarterback who won't play in 3 or 4 years, could have potentially contended. I mean, that's the reason they got Kirk Cousins, right? Because they felt like they could contend this year. So it's
what this gets down to, guys, is that the general manager, Terry Fontenot, basically bet his job on this pick.
Yep.
And, well, really bet his job on signing Cousins and then taking this. So somebody's got to jump to the forefront, and somebody's got to jump to the forefront quick. Now, I don't disagree with what you said about Penix as far as where he should have. What you had graded on him. Mm-hmm. I had him more of a late one. I mean, I didn't like him at all when he was in Indiana. So because of the way he played at Indiana when he was at Washington last year, I'm looking and I didn't want to like him because he was terrible in Indiana. But hey, he got better. But he also had a great supporting cast. Just look at how many guys got drafted off of that team.
Oh yeah.
But the fact was, as we got closer to the draft, it came out. I thought he was going to go in the teens. The shocker was he went, in the top 10. Regardless of where I had him or where I liked him,
Mm-hmm.
I thought that's where he's going to end up going. But by God, to go in the top 10, and he's older, the whole situation it just crazy for some reason, and they're getting killed for it, and deservedly so.
Yeah, and I'll admit, too, the Atlanta Falcons were the one team I was scared of the most to pick Roma Dunzi. If, like what Aldo said, they had Kirk Cousins, they had a good assortment of weapons as is on offense. If they had picked Roma Dunzi, could you imagine Drake London, Draco Dunzi,
Darnell Mooney,
Chicago Bear?
Yeah, I never thought they were going to take a wide receiver. I thought it was a lock. They were going either. I kept hearing Dallas Turner or Byron Murphy, and Murphy more so in the last 4 or 5 days leading up to the draft. Before that, it was always Dallas Turner, and everybody, all of the analysts had a defensive lineman mocked to him. Almost everybody had Dallas Turner. Yet, I mean, they went the other way. I never even thought receiver for them. I always thought that a Dunze was going to be there. It's, do they want to pull the trigger on him or trade out? Because there was a lot of work, and there were a lot of tweets by people, Ian Rappaport, Diana Rossini, and others all said, Bears are looking to trade. But it turns out they were looking to trade because they didn't think a Dunze was there. And then they would have traded down. But it was out there that everybody, or a lot of people thought what the Bears were going to do was trade down. But hey, it turned out good for them. They got the players they wanted, and we'll see. I think, Aldo, we got to cut this pretty soon because we've been an hour and 20.
Yeah, and I got to prep for our next show, but I got one quick question for Eric, given that he has grown up with surrounded by people he loves who are Packers fans. What is the reaction to I think they got 6 choices, the Packers, Jordan Morgan at the offensive tackle, Edgerrin Cooper at linebacker, Javon Bullard, the safety, Marshawn Lloyd, and Tyron Hopper. Those are their 5 picks that the Packers have. What's the reaction? Have the Packers dramatically improved their team somewhat, or
I mean, I can give you my answer, like where I sit with them, and then I can give you my granddad's reaction. It kind of runs in the family where we are internal optimists, and at Windy City Gridiron I have the nickname Optimus Prime because somehow I find a way to put sunshine and puppies everywhere in the blog. But I will say this, though, just like most Packer fans I knew and people I've had conversations with, that first round pick was a head scratcher at the best, to say it nicely. I thought that was a horrible pick, but that might be me trashing the Packers for no reason. I don't care. But you look at realistically, that first round pick, a lot of people scratching their heads, and it looked like a panic move to the eyes of most Packer fans because there was a run at offensive tackles I thought there would be in the first round, and all of a sudden, they come out with some guy that had a second round pick grade, and I'm like, that's a reach. But and to Aaron's point, though, Javon is a good player. That is a good football player. But where I think the Packers kind of messed up on is they had an opportunity just to continue beefing up the offensive line a little bit. They had some pretty good weapons on the board in the first round as well. Reluctance to draft offensive skill in the first round. And I'm kind of thankful for that because if they had picked one of the receivers at that point in the draft, I'd be pretty upset. But they're very mixed at best on the draft. And just I have that picture I tweeted about the Packer cheesehead. Just had his head all hung down in shame. He's like, no, don't bother me. But they're all like jeering at him. I'm like, yeah, it's a bad pick. But
the only pick that I question about them, I mean, I thought Morgan was a little bit overdrafted, but at the same time, I put him in that 20 to 40 category where, everybody has these guys rated a little bit differently. He's got versatility in that he can play tackle or guard. So, I mean, if he went 40, it wouldn't have shocked me. And going where he went, that didn't shock me either. I think, there's a lot of players there that are similar. But the guy they took their first pick in the third round, Marshawn Lloyd. Marshawn Lloyd's a good player. I mean, from that standpoint, it's good. But they got A.J. Dillon, and they just signed Josh Jacobs, who was with the Raiders. When's this guy going to see the field?
Yeah, right.
So was it a real, or are they going to move on from A.J. Dillon? And AJ Dillon is a pounder, where this guy is almost like a. If you want to use size and speed, he's similar to Khalil Hilbert, but he can catch the ball a lot better than Hilbert can. But the same size, same speed as Hilbert was coming out. He's not very big. He's 5'8", 3/4", but he weighs 220 and he runs a sub 4.5. He's a good player. I just don't see the fit for Green Bay.
Yeah. All right. I hate to end the show talking about Green Bay Packers, but I had to get that question into Eric. We'll be talking more about the NFC North selections at our next show while we're covering the next 4 rounds of the NFL draft. Eric, can't thank you enough for being on the show. Any final words that you have for Bears fans and followers?
All I can say is, if you want to see more of my work, you go to Windy City Gridiron, the best blog on the planet for the Chicago Bears. Again, it's a pleasure to finally have the chance to formally meet with Greg and yourself with the Barroom Network, and I look forward to more opportunities in the future to talk Bears football. Just throw up the Bears logo somewhere, shoot me the DMs, and I'll answer the call.
Outstanding. Greg, any final thoughts?
No, I just hope that they get a really good player pretty soon and then go from there.
There you go. That's what we're all hoping for. And, given that I got to be on the seat for the next few hours, I'm just hoping for something dramatic and fun to happen, more crazy trades, more questionable decision-making. And so we'll keep our fingers crossed for that.
Austin Booker, no matter what.
There you go. I like that. I like that thinking. For Greg, for Eric, and myself, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you later. Thank you.
Everybody.